Melee, needless technical knowledge, and the humble CRT television. Three things almost inseparable, like two peas and a pod. These bulky, boxy little things are the preferred displays for many a competitive Melee player. But why? We're 23 years removed from Melee's release, and these dudes in their 20s are still playing on these big-ass TVs that are older than them. Modern 16:9 LCD displays have been ubiquitous for a little under 2 decades, and they aren't somehow incapable of being used for this game. In fact, a very small amount of tournaments are actually run on modern displays. Compared to these monitors, the CRT is almost comical in comparison. With its dated 4:3 ratio, its blurry, low-res flickering image, and high-pitched whine. The short answer is that modern displays are laggier than a good CRT, and to play on an LCD monitor with equivalent or near-equivalent latency, you've literally got to hack the game to display its visuals more quickly and respond to inputs more quickly to compensate for this additional delay. Of course, this requires a hacked Wii, a Wii to HDMI adapter, on top of a low latency monitor, which, if the venue isn't supplying, can quickly add up. However, because of the logistical nightmare it can be to lug around 100 heavy CRTs for a tournament, the price isn't necessarily the deal breaker. The deal breaker might actually be that, for people hosting majors with thousands of attendees, tens of thousands of viewers at home, and sponsors, running the tournament on Wiis using unofficial software to do something they can't normally do puts them at risk of the great evil of gaming's wrath. A more boxy aspect ratio does have its perks though, especially in this age of 16:9. For example, you can quite easily fit in extra information on a single screen while streaming, such as player cams, sponsors, tags, and shit like that. All while not obstructing the view of the game itself, a blessing in disguise. Conversely, I've seen Ultimate streams simply eschew things like the player cam because of the limited real estate a game natively outputting to 16:9 creates. Now, while the typical cathode ray tube television does display a 4:3 aspect ratio, Melee itself does not run at 4:3, and instead actually runs at the bizarre 7360. You can see this discrepancy pretty easily by looking at some relics of Melee's past, like Wombo Combo. This box that makes up the video player is 4:3, like a CRT, but what's inside this box paints the full picture. See these black bars? They're due to Melee's wonky aspect ratio, which doesn't fit perfectly within the CRT's frame. This fact might make you question why you don't see these voids when Melee is being played on an actual CRT, and that's because the CRT doesn't actually display the full image of anything. It's always slightly zoomed in, a process called overscanning that was designed to accommodate different CRTs displaying different amounts of what's actually there, while hopefully not showing these empty areas. This is also why old games, Melee included, make sure not to put UI elements too close to the borders of the rendered image, to ensure they're not cut off by the actual part of the game displayed on a CRT, the game's intended viewing device. Here are the parts of my particular CRT's display that are cut off. At Toronto Major Get on My Level 10, when a technical mishap forced production to capture the gameplay straight from their cameras, I got to see how much of the game was being hidden on their CRTs. And it's a good amount. Look at how close the percentages are to the bottom of the screen, despite how much space is there in actuality. Fast forwarding to the results screen, we can see that not only is the top of this border graphic closer to the borders of the screen than usual, it's also only cut off at the top left, indicating that this display is slightly off kilter as well, ultimately resulting in crooked and significantly cropped gameplay for these two players due to the CRT's design. Anyway. While the devices used to run tournaments might not have changed in 20 years, that doesn't mean the game remained static as well. I've spoken of hardware and software additions, online functionality, and community-made patches before, but I think the simplest, and perhaps most interesting way to talk about how a game might continue to develop so deep into its life is with one character.
Here we go.
Oh yeah.
Because he's been doing so well with Donkey Kong.
Having so much fun.
Oh, this is huge. Oh my god. There's a blooper! Oh my god! Oh my god.
Oh, that's terrible.
Oh, Lance gets the upper. He's still not dead yet.
Oh my god!
Style.
All you're thinking about here is upbeat. What's down for there?
Had no idea how to get in, and yeah.
It was like a consensus opinion.
You know what it was? It was Eddie. Eddie just put Ganon on the map way too hard, dude.
Way too early.
Yeah.
This character kills you in one
my
hit.
god!
This character kills you in one hit. It's ridiculous.
I mean, let's cut to the chase. As I'm typing this script, the #1 ranked player in the world, Cody, just lost to an unranked Donkey Kong player named Bing. In what is probably the biggest upset in Melee's history. And this is only a few weeks after a different Donkey Kong player named, got maybe the most impressive tournament win as a Donkey Kong ever, utilizing DK's ridiculous punishes all the way to the top.
Oh, and this is such a big
Quang
combo.
just knows
With
something
neutral
I do
blade
not
too,
know.
yup.
Sup, it's future me. I made that segment in late May, and it's now July. So this is a brief addendum because the apes move quick. While did win that big tournament, bodied 7 in May, fellow Donkey Kong player Junebug just won Patchwork 2024, an arguably slightly more prestigious tournament. Beat Ossify twice to win the tournament, who is probably top 20 in the world, while Junebug beat Salt twice, who is possibly top 10. Anyway, both incredible achievements, both really good for the game. I'd wager the vast majority of people interested in Melee like seeing the meta shake up like this, but I just wanted to quickly update. Crazy shit, considering it wasn't until very recently that Donkey Kong was seen as an even decent character. In fact, in my own video discussing Melee's viable characters just 4 years ago, I don't even bring him up once. One could argue that, in spite of this massive leap in results for a less developed and more primitive character, the actual game proper hasn't changed, which is true. Kind of. However, I'd retort by saying that while this is kind of true, the means in which the game is played has in fact changed so drastically that it has altered what we know as Melee. Sure, when you go online, you're not playing a fundamentally different game than was being played 10 or 20 years ago, but simply having access to live, real player practice changes the game's meta significantly. It allows you to hone your neutral and execution on people of all skill ranges, in a way that legends of the game like Pee-Pee used to have to shadowbox to get approximate Melee reps in. Access to superior practice doesn't stop there even remotely. Practice tools like 20XX and Uncle Punch's training mode have pushed the limits of what people can even, do significantly. And character-specific resources are a dime a dozen. Now even new players are smash DIing Fox's up air and Falco's down air. Scrubs, who started playing weeks ago, are ledge dashing. And properly timing and executing aerials so they're safe on shield. Things that really not that long ago were exclusively the domain of mid-level or higher players. With accessible and improved means of practice for everyone, the community has paradoxically reduced the catch-up period that once inhibited so many new players, while simultaneously expediting the gradual improvement of already established top players. It's not a stretch to say that these tools, accessible online play and robust training mods, are what allowed the people who play Donkey Kong to shatter the glass ceiling and begin getting significant results.
Is it happening? Is it happening? Oh, you missed it before! Jimbo gets it!
You gotta be kidding me!
And even more than with DK's already established player base, inspire other players to actively abandon their previous main, move down on the current tier list, and main DK instead. And get better results. The opportunity cost of playing certain characters, let alone switching to a mid-tier, is the lowest it's ever been thanks to these advancements, and this change is being reflected in a meta that is shifting around them. Compared to every other mid-tier you see gradually accrue solid or great results in competitive Melee, Donkey Kong's emergence as a viable character has been so bizarrely abrupt that I would almost liken him to a DLC character. In this age of AsumSaus winning majors, Eddie Mexico beating Mango, the DK's tearing shit up, and Morse code being up in sets versus the rank 1 and rank 3 players in the world. What's a mid-tier anyway? And what actually is a bad character? In Japanese, there's this word, kusoge, which means really good game. Super Smash Bros. Melee is a kusoge. Melee is also not one of my favorite games, though when paired with a GameCube controller or GameCube controller alternative that functions relatively adequately, a half-decent internet connection, a few, alterations, as well as a specialized custom rule set, Melee is a supremely fun, extremely accessible competitive video game of infinite replayability. Plus, its various quirks, intricacies, and history as a competitive game are endlessly fascinating. And the same way this game can still be incredibly enjoyable in small ways, despite not being a personal favorite, Melee's bad characters can have good things about them, despite overall being bad. It's not uncommon to see opinions expressed online that half of Melee's roster is garbage, or even more hyperbolically, unusable, when, to the contrary, some of Melee's bad characters arguably possess the best version of specific attack types. You may have heard the old joke that Zelda has the best down B in the game because it transforms her into Sheik, moving her up 20 or so odd spaces on the tier list. Though I would still say that Fox's Shine and Rest are better than Sheik's entire being. However, the debate over the best down tilt in Melee pretty commonly comes down to either Fox or Marth's, both of which are incredibly long, disjointed moves, the former a combo and poking tool, or at very high percents a kill move, and the latter a tool to either initiate a tech chase, poke, or edge guard. There are, however, some dark horse picks that are perhaps equally as valid. Roy's down tilt is very similar to Fox's, despite Roy himself sharing his moveset with Marth. It's disjointed, pokes, and can combo into many of Roy's attacks, and is arguably safer than Fox's, as, like Marth's down tilt, you can interrupt this otherwise laggy move by inputting a consecutive down tilt or dashing away beginning on frame 20. Roy's low-profile dash aiding in his ability to avoid being punished for a down tilt on shield. Mewtwo's down tilt is a similarly ridiculous move. Extremely long, fast startup, very spammable, but Mewtwo's also reliably kill confirms most, if not all, of the cast. Never mind the fact that it's also, of course, a combo starter. This is my pick for best down tilt in the game. One could argue that Captain Falcon's Knee, a popular pick for best forward aerial, if not just best aerial, is a slightly inferior version of Zelda's, which does more damage, more quickly, with a bigger hitbox, and even more base knockback. Mr. Game & Watch's throws are nearly indistinguishable from each other, making attempts to DI them somewhat of a dice roll. DI the wrong way as certain characters, and just be grabbed again into the same situation. And even when Mr. Game & Watch doesn't have a chain grab on you, the tricky throw animations still create an issue in trying to escape a follow-up. Most commonly in the form of Game & Watch's strong aerials, but sometimes, if he's feeling lucky, a 9. As for the bottom tiers, Bowser's below 100% attack from ledge is probably the best in its respective field, with a massive area of active hitboxes and incredibly quick startup. Kirby probably has the cutest taunt in the game. As a quick aside, how funny is it that Pichu, the confirmed funny haha joke character in the game, made for those lapping their friends and family in skill, is not actually the worst character in the game? None of this is to say these characters aren't bad, but rather to hopefully dispel the idea in the minds of some that they're somehow just, in their entirety, inferior, or just completely not functional.
Congratulations. Blocking my Toyota.
After all, in recent years, every character but the bottom 5 has been used to beat players in the top 0.001 percentile of all players to ever play the game, which is also a very conservative estimate. Generally, the low tiers in Melee don't not have good things about them to make them usable. They simply have less good options than good characters. For an obvious example, we can look at any in-the-know Zelda player to see that 90% of their moves are forward air, and a move that is pretty much forward air in the opposite direction, back air. Not because their C-sticks are locked horizontally, but because these options are both, at minimum, good relative to the entire cast, and extremely good when compared to the rest of Zelda's lackluster kit. This is, undeniably, a one-dimensional playstyle, but as one of the worst characters in the game, with some of the least good options in the game, is the playstyle that Zelda players must subscribe to if they want any kind of meaningful success competitively. I think this one-dimensionality Melee's weaker characters possess is why many players will instantly quit out on low tiers when matched with them online.
Choose your character.
On top of simply ego, these playstyle shitty characters have to use may simply be boring to engage with for some, which is, in truth, a fair assessment when comparing the complexity interactions between two characters with a bunch of good options can have. However, as a non-insignificant amount of the cast are what many would call shitty characters, do the people who would prefer not to engage with them, a well-documented phenomenon in Melee, even enjoy the game?
I was like, you really think I'm the type of guy that's gonna play a game at once? Like, I'm not trying to play a game at once.
Or do they, like me, just enjoy their own Melee minigame, where they pick and choose the aspects of the game they enjoy, while actively disliking or outright refusing to play against a third or more of the cast, on a rule set that is already a limited portion of what Melee actually is? What is Melee? Super Smash Bros. Melee, or just Melee, is a 2001 party platformer fighting game that has cultivated a cult-like cult following. Welcome. Of course, Melee as a concept has taken on an identity of its own, and has reached far beyond its initial confines as a mere video game. For many, it's a livelihood, a means of expression, a social sphere,
Down there! New York City in the fucking building! What's good, SoCal?
a competitive outlet, or simply something to watch.
Loving it.
When people say they like or love Melee, they could mean any one of these ideas or any combination of these ideas. A community full of those that have taken to any of these different Melees has contributed to one of the longest standing competitive gaming scenes ever, and one that is, thanks to the contribution of many, still getting new blood to this day. New blood that may not even actively play the game, but merely exist within the scene as Twitch viewers, YouTube viewers, or Ultimate players that just prefer Melee as a spectator. People who do unambiguously support Melee, just not as a player. Because of these other forms Melee has taken on as a concept, enjoying Melee, and even enjoying Melee greatly, doesn't necessarily mean you have to engage with all, or indeed any, of the actual game. A spectator who tunes into tournaments can like Melee as a competitive player can like Melee, just not in all the same ways. In fact, one of the biggest contributors to modern Melee isn't known for entering tournaments or even being a big player of the game, and yet is celebrated as the very reason Melee made it through an era when in-person events weren't possible. One of the biggest influences of Melee's prior era is also not known as a player, but nonetheless drew so many people to the game with his Smash documentary that the demographic of players he introduced to the game are known as Dog Kids. A bit of a misnomer nowadays. My own introduction to Melee came from GR Smash, an inspiration of mine who used to make Smash compilation videos, and is also definitely not known as a player. Evidently, GR Smash enjoys Smash as a series rather than just a single entry. Yet, regardless of his preferences between Smash titles, was passionate enough about Melee to document thousands of moments throughout its history, and through that documentation, introduce thousands, including me, to the game. When I went to my first and only major tournament, Genesis 4 in 2017, my channel was still GR Smash, but for Melee. And at that time, I saw myself as more of a competitor than a guy who makes shit online about the game. But as my teenage years gave way to young adult years, and some external factors forced a rebrand, I found myself more impassioned by the prospect of video editing and writing than simply documenting funny clips and actively practicing.
We're having a southern hoedown right now from Dr. PP.
Put simply, while I don't actively compete in Melee, I still do create for it. And I think being able to find a way to still contribute to and enjoy a concept as diverse as Melee, like this, without interfacing with most or any of the actual game, is why Melee has endured for so long for so many people. In short, I don't think automatically quitting out on over half the cast means you don't like Melee as a concept, but you definitely don't like the game.
I doubt you'll see this, but I'd like to say that I love your Melee videos. I don't play Melee, hell, I don't even keep up with competitive Melee, but your videos are just so amazing that they make me love the game even if I have like 0 interactions with it. And I wanted to thank you for that.
I'm happy to spark that love for Melee in you, dude. Want to hear about a time Melee made me feel something? It's probably a moment that few noticed when it happened live on stream, and of the few who saw it, most have likely forgotten. Inconsequential as it is, it remains one of the most poignant things I've seen, at least in a video game tournament. It was in 2016, the year I got into Melee, that a tournament called Battle of the Five Gods was held, a tournament that would definitively mark the end of an era, as it was the last time the eponymous 5 gods of the game, PPMD, Mewtwo King, Armada, Mango, and Hungrybox, would compete at the same tournament. Along with 15 other extremely good but significantly less decorated players, these gods, one of which was all but guaranteed to take the tournament, would fight for the title of the true god of Smash. The first of the gods to fall was PPMD, who was eliminated in pools.
A little bit of an aura of somberness.
Yeah.
Seeing this once Titan fight for his life like this.
Yes.
Then fell Mewtwo King at 7th, and Armada at 3rd. This left just Hungrybox, who at one point was considered the weakest of these 5 players.
If you put all the gods at the same tournament, only me, Armada, and Kevin have won. So like, that's a stat that people overlook.
And Mango, who had seemingly effortlessly been the strongest of the gods until just the year prior. In Grand Finals, Mango, who is coming from losers, was, by his own admission, feeling himself a little too much after a quick 3-0 victory in the first set. Unfortunately for Mango, this hubris led to the second and final set of the tournament going firmly to Hungrybox.
It's not gonna be enough.
Up tilt and not enough.
Hard. Yeah, but he's having trouble wrapping this up.
That's a rest!
That's a rest! Mango going down to Hungrybox. Hungrybox is taking the tournament. Battle of the 5 gods.
Holy crap. Liquid Hungrybox is the champion of Battle of the 5 Gods, taking first place with $13,000.
Oh my goodness.
At a tournament celebrating his gaming godhood, ironically, I don't think Mango has ever looked so human. Maybe it was losing the silly title of True God of Smash.
These might be the single happiest moment of my entire life, to be honest.
Or how close he was to taking a tournament with all 5 of the best players in attendance after a relative dry spell the year prior. Or maybe it was losing to the guy he had a ridiculously positive record on in particular. There's no way to know for sure what caused such a strong emotional reaction to this loss specifically. I mean, other than asking him, which I'm not gonna do. But I do know that this is the last tournament all 5 gods would enter. And it's perhaps the start of Hungrybox's rise from weakest god to undeniably the strongest. And as Hungrybox's era of dominance comes and goes too, characters suddenly become viable 2 decades down the line. Seamless online play for this old game becomes a reality, and Hungrybox and Mango end up the last 2 gods to actively compete. I know that Melee is continuing to grow and change. I know as I watch legends of the game, players who used to be so far ahead of the competition They were called gods, struggling to take tournaments over the new generation of top talent, but still trying their best. That Melee continues to evolve. And that is Melee as shit. Big thank you to 3 rats using a GameCube controller, Agent CA, Alpine, Droid, Dubs Rewatcher, Ev McSheps, George Bush, Griffin, GR Smash, Pause the Mage, Fizzy, Jokey, Junex Gaming, Kitty Cat Addy, Lenny M, LRC Napkin, Matthew B, Melapepin, Oliver D, Pipecork, P Jiggles, PM Casey, Royal Pear, Safi Chaos, Shep I Have Tried Meditation, Stephanator, That Rack, The Storm, The Flying Fire, Trendrect, Tribe, BG, Wyvern, Zia, and Yashichi.